It's extremely scary.
Well, this has to do with what you say called like the new Arctic. I mean that I'm co-opting that term now because of you. I cite you as I use that term. But the new Arctic in general, I mean, your videos did a great job. Arctic Report Card, the one you did today, I watched Changing Biodiversity in the Arctic, and then Climate Forcing Animations. All very interesting. So I'm ready to unpack this.
I kind of like the animation one there because it puts to bed, in my view. It's like, well, this natural cycles are causing all this stuff here. Oh, there's the data. You're gonna dispute the data. It's right there. And then you look at the CO2, it tracks perfectly. It's like, do we need any more proof? I mean,
Yeah, the
really?
CO2, the 420 parts per million issue, that kind of
Oh
ties
my
into
God.
everything that's going on too. Just
I mean,
how do you,
I've been keeping, I was hearing 417, 417.6, that kind of stuff there. And all of a sudden, 421.8. Holy shit, where did that come from?
I
And it's
don't
at the
know.
same place, it's in Hawaii,
Right,
it,
that
it,
place, the Mana, yeah,
it,
I'm gonna
yeah,
butcher it.
wow, it's up there,
Yeah.
11,000 feet. It's just like 421. I mean, it didn't just creep. It went, just blew right past it.
I'm gonna say the lockdowns didn't mean anything. I'll just say that and we can move forward.
Well,
'Cause
here's an interesting thing, and this is, and I admit I am not well versed on this topic, but uh, uh, in, back in January, and then just this past week, are you familiar with Nature Bats Last, that podcast?
no, but can continue on.
It's two gentlemen hosted. One is Kevin Hester, he's out of New Zealand, and the other one is Guy McPherson. Have you heard of Guy
Sounds
McPherson?
familiar.
And he's
Okay,
Mr. Aerosol guy. And
it
and I
sounds
admit
familiar.
I'm not up on aerosol, but his main thesis, his main hypothesis, is that the aerosol, what he calls global dimming, the aerosol that results, for example, from burning coal, when we put these particulate matters in the atmosphere, is actually
Oh,
helping to keep the planet cooler. Even though we're seeing the warming, if it weren't for the aerosol, the warming would be even more so. So he said, going to green energy, he said, will actually increase the warming because you don't have the aerosol dimming effect.
wow.
That's his main point. And
Okay.
it's like no matter which way you look at this, you're screwed.
I know. You're getting, yeah,
I
it's,
said, I've been bookmarking papers and stuff like that, so I'm going. I understand physics, I understand fluid dynamics and stuff like that, but I'm now trying to get a handle on the precise physics related to aerosols and the chemistry involved. Now the thing is, okay, we just had a volcano go poof earlier, right?
yeah, today something happened that I think is in the
Yeah,
Caribbean, I guess.
so it's like you got all this stuff in the atmosphere. But here's the thing: the aerosols are very short-lived. They stay in the atmosphere, at most a week. But of course, we continue to put it in, and we
Right.
continue to keep pumping the crap up there. But here's the interesting thing: this is something I'm learning. The aerosol that results from human pollution, the particles are smaller, and we're talking like microns, inside. Particles are smaller, so because they're smaller, they stay aloft in the atmosphere for longer. Whereas the particles that come from, say, volcanoes, when they throw up all this stuff, they're larger, so they settle out quicker. So there may be a regional cooling, but it quickly settles out.
Okay, it's micro
Whereas
level. Yeah.
Whereas with the smaller particles, and of course, it's a function of altitude. How high does it get in the atmosphere? The higher it goes, the more chances that wind patterns can spread it, disperse it. If it stays lower in altitude, then then any effect will probably be more local, more regional, as opposed to, say, hemispheric. But you know, so what he's basically saying is that these smaller particles are having a longer effect because they're staying up in the atmosphere a little longer than from the natural particles, but it's still causing a dimming because the top of the particles is reflecting sun energy back into space. So it's almost like this.
Okay.
I see an analogy with water vapor, because water vapor, is a greenhouse gas. It traps heat, but the top of clouds reflects heat. So now,
Yeah.
the particulates could be reflecting the heat, trapping the heat. It comes down to budgets. You have to calculate the budget.
The thing that comes to mind is like in my mind, wildfires were like because there was so much smoke, it made the temperatures cooler.
Hmm.
Okay,
That's a local effect, and that's
local
because you have,
effect.
and that's because you've got the soot. But the soot is much bigger. So when the fires eventually stop, that stuff settles out quickly, and even the rains could wash it out. So, but yes, you're right. When sometimes you do, aside from the immediate heat blast from the fires themselves from burning, but when you get away from where the fires are burning and you got the soot clouds there, yeah, you get a
Yeah.
cooling effect. You get a cooling effect.
So just in general with your video too, with the animations and how like the CO2 is rising, it's the greenhouse gas issue, um, volcanoes. You like this it was showing what climate change, like what it's not natural. It's not natural. Okay, it's the CO2 in the atmosphere that's it's not
Yeah,
natural variations. But
which
yeah,
is why, because people say, well, methane doesn't last as long. It may be a stronger greenhouse gas, it doesn't last as long. That's because it gets oxidized to carbon dioxide. So it's still going to be there in a form or another, which is why another thing we're seeing more and more these days is what we call carbon equivalent, which basically is, as opposed to just ppms of CO2, it's ppms of carbon equivalent, which means they're taking into account CO2, methane, and even nitrous oxide. Nitrous oxide is N2O. It's still a greenhouse gas, so they're equating, well, this level of N2O would be equivalent to this many ppms of CO2. So now what they're doing is they're taking the CO2 to CH4, the N2O, and they're calculating what's called the carbon equivalent in parts per million. And when you look at those values, it's over 560, 570.
I believe it. We put so much stuff in the air, cars, factories,
Exactly.
particles are out. I mean, maybe it's a good thing we're wearing
Exactly.
masks. Oh my God, because that's like
And
dystopian. Yeah, go ahead.
and it was interesting because we got because I was just on there this Tuesday, and we got talking about Michael Mann, and Guy basically goes, Michael Mann knows about aerosols. It's appalling that he's ignoring it.
Interesting. What?
Because I was basically saying I was dismayed that he was ignoring thermal inertia, and he's basically saying, well, he goes and he's ignoring uh, aerosols, which I find appalling. And then I mentioned, I just saw one of the last papers that Jim Hansen published before retiring he was examining the aerosol effect. And some of his conclusions, and basically, and guy said, "Yes, I'm familiar with the paper, and it was a good piece of scholarly research."
So we're at 1.4 C with all the pollution. I mean, and everything, but it could be worse if we were actually like you said in your video that we're actually should be going into a colder climate versus
Let's refer to the Milankovitch.
yes.
If you look at the Milankovitch signaling, the periodicity of that, Earth should be going into a cooling down phase,
Okay, yeah, you mentioned that, and I was
warming
like,
up. So you
imagine
could
if
say the
yeah,
Milankovitch tempering thing. If the Milankovitch was going in the warming phase,
that's what I was.
and then add it to what we're doing here, shit, we might be past 2.5.
Things would be even more dire. Like I feel like I've said this before, we're on borrowed time, but there seems to be a lot of like Deus ex machina. I don't know how else to say it. Like we're being saved a lot. I don't know how else to say that. Um,
Well, Guy McPherson mentioned Dr. Paul Ehrlich. Now, you and I talked about him before. He's one that wrote the population time bomb back in the 70s. And he
right.
basically saying there's too many people on the planet. That was back 50 years ago. And he was ridiculed and he was excoriated and all this other stuff. Well, it's taken 50 years, but he's basically been proven correct. And he said recently, he goes, there's no hope for humanity. We might as well enjoy what time we've got left.
Oh no.
he seriously said that. He goes, you might as well just like spend the time teaching people.
Like how good we had it. Yeah, it's the
Yeah,
population time bomb. It's so interesting. I love this. I love talking about this with you because, like, yeah, this is an issue, but it's like it's such a hard issue because, yeah,
people don't want to talk about it.
I know, because it's like because we want to like reproduce as a species, right? Like some brain for that's what we do as animals, right? Trying to
When I
repopulate.
was on Black Bear News,
Oh man,
Kevin, we were talking, and I just said, well, one thing that doesn't get mentioned, and which is really a major contributor to what's going on, is overpopulation of people. Too many people on the planet. And in the comments section goes, "Oh my God, Jim mentioned what can never be mentioned."
exactly. It. I think there's like this level of extinction, like, oh, if we don't breed, we're gonna like die out, but we're like overbreeding. I
So,
don't I don't know. I don't even know anymore. I don't people want to live.
lifespan of Americans, it's dropping.
And I saw, which reminded me, because you mentioned, the obesity rate has increased since the 90s. Like it's gotten like,
Processed food and
yeah.
plastics and
Mm-hmm.
chemicals.
And chemicals. This is all
And
pollution issue. Yeah.
I mean, and there's stuff that's done in the US for quote unquote food production that are banned in every other goddamn country. Some of the chemical, some of the plastic, it's just totally banned in other countries. But they're putting it in our food here. We're ingesting it, even quote unquote organic, produce. We're still ingesting the plastic.
I
It's
know.
messing with our endocrine system. And if you have a certain genetic disposition where that affects you, you turn into me. Jabba the Hutt here. Yeah.
Talk to the Star Wars stuff. Okay, go ahead, Jim. Oh, that's hilarious. Okay.
But I mean, seriously, I mean, it's like, I don't drink alcohol. I don't drink soda. Like,
I
it's,
know. I
you
have
know,
no, go
and
ahead.
I look like Jabba the Hutt, but it's just like, anyway, maybe I should have Yodi here or some damn thing.
Oh my
But
god, that's
and
hilarious.
I'm not a Star Wars fan, but anyway, but
I'm not either, but I watch like comedy stuff making fun of it, so like I'm aware of who's who now.
but it's just like the food is literally killing us. Then
I
you
know.
couple that with the fact that we don't have access to healthcare because it's too freaking expensive, and then you access the fact what happened under Trump's term, you know,
I know. We're just coming out of that.
everything else. It's just like the average age of American is dropping, and if you're Hispanic or black, it's even worse.
I know food deserts is an issue. I mean, there's so many things that came to my mind just there. But yeah,
I
it's
mean, they cut social programs. So if you're like, let's say, a single Hispanic mom or single black mom, and you've got two kids, whatever, right?
mm,
And
yeah.
you're working minimum wage, you're gonna go to the store. Can you afford the $5 a pound produce, or you're gonna get the 80 cents box of mac and cheese
The 80-cent box of mac and cheese.
because you got to put something in your kid's stomach?
I know.
That's part of the problem.
And we know that two issues: one, that billionaires and the rich people got richer during the pandemic, and two, the grocery stores got richer during the pandemic and they
Oh
refused
my
to
God,
pay.
food prices are just,
Thank you. Yeah. Okay.
oh my God, it's just like,
This is
what the
it, Jim. Okay. You know what I mean?
uh,
Like, it's just another
it's
issue.
just, I'm just sitting there like every time I go to the grocery store, it's just like, Jesus Christ, a sticker shock.